The Golden Mile Dealership by Richard L. Elsliger. Copyright 2023. Billy Jensen remembered the day well, a cold and blustery October day when the dealership closed its doors forever. The demand for cars had withered when the recession hit, and that especially applied to performance vehicles. The poor economy wielded a dagger, slashing household budgets and creating a macro horror to the country, the likes of which had never been seen before. The Golden Mile Chevrolet fell victim in the later stages of the decline. So buoyant in the beginning, their financial bulkheads collapsed from the prolonged financial strain, and in the end, they went down like the Titanic, all hands lost forever. From all accounts, the staff made an abrupt and unexpected exit late afternoon on the last day of October, just before the witches and werewolves came out to collect their sugar-frosted souvenirs. The event happened over a decade ago, yet Billy remembered the year and the day quite vividly. How could he forget? The dealer left behind a brand new Buick Grand National on the showroom floor for all to see. The Buick posed behind the plate glass window, a sordid reminder of what might have been, but could never be. That Halloween night, the Buick drew the spotlight, an extravagant centerpiece to an otherwise empty building. The oversight seemed both incredulous and absurd, a maniacal mistake by a manager so desperate to evacuate that the loss of this Buick was acceptable collateral damage in exchange for a lifeboat just to paddle away. Even the showroom chandelier remained on, spraying cool, ghost-like beams over the crisp lines of the Buick through nightfall. The Grand National was darkness possessed. A sheen of black paint gleamed under the chandelier, a car devoid of empathy that seemed to repel the light of day. No one had ever seen a more sinister car, but more important, no one could comprehend why this car got left behind. All could agree that the reputation of the Grand National preceded the car, a fast demon that vanquished all contenders that came across its path. To see the car seemingly abandoned on the showroom floor invited many speculations as to what happened. Conjectures swirled in the air that Halloween night, probing questions about why the dealership would leave behind such a coveted vehicle. Had they actually forgotten to remove the car and return it to its point of origin? By morning all questions were answered, and the Buick was gone, the lights off, and the showroom empty. A gentle snow flurry coated the sidewalks, and frost had spread its needle-like slivers over the window panes of the Golden Mile Chevrolet. On that fateful day, so many years ago, Billy had awakened early just to drive to the outskirts of town, compelled to check on the Buick, only to see the empty showroom floor, ending his personal speculations. The Grand National was gone, and no one thought much more about the dealership or its hard times. Years went by, but Billy Jensen could not shake the idea of that Grand National. He wanted the car for himself, and would have purchased it but for the closure. All he needed at the time was approval of necessary financing and a little notice to get the funds together. He considered tracking the car down, but abandoned the idea as it had been years ago when he last saw the specter of the Buick on the showroom floor. He banished the thoughts from his mind and went about his normal existence in the small town where he'd grown up. He'd taken a factory job, and before he knew it, 13 years had slipped out from beneath him. He remembered having been married and divorced, only the dates were blurred to his recollection. Not much else had changed in his life, and he went about his daily routine without much thought until one overcast autumn day. It was late October again. The new millennium had arrived without much fanfare beyond the changing of the year. Everything else unfolded as expected in the natural world, unaffected by the new calendar number. Many of the leaves had changed their colors, and many of them still had yet to perform their autumn task. With constant and continued bombardment from the lofty treetops, they fulfilled their preordained sentence to rest at the old tree roots below. Bright oranges and reds rustled and stirred over the stark two-lane road. Billy left work early and found himself driving straight home that afternoon to get his pre-purchased candy ready for the swarms that would eventually congregate at his doorstep. The sun set with fall brilliance, casting golden rays across the asphalt. A pile of colorful leaves formed eddies in the wake of Billy's uninspired commuter car. They churned in his rearview mirror, and the smell of crisp autumn decay filled his nose with pungent yet pleasant odors of harvest time. Ahead and off to the right was the old dealership, looking neglected, except something was different this time. Billy let off the throttle, his eyes focused on the showroom. The overhead interior light was on, and he could see a black mass coming into visualization as he drew nearer. "I'll be damned," he said. The black Buick had returned, poised in all its glory through the glass window panes. Billy stopped the car cold, confused at what he saw. Some trick-or-treaters milled about the area, but none took any notice of the Grand National on display. Either they didn't see it or didn't seem to care. More than a decade had passed since the car was new and sat in the showroom window, bathing in its omnipresent form so mysterious, yet so ubiquitous. Billy pulled into the empty car lot and killed the engine. The cracked concrete of the dealership had started to buckle in places, and a profuse collection of weeds pierced the fragmented fault lines, staking their claim to reacquire land that urban encroachment had stolen from them. A chill ran through Billy, his brain unable to reconcile why the Buick had reappeared exactly 13 years later to the day. He got out and furtively approached the showroom window. Rays of fading sunlight reflected off the glass, and Billy cupped his hands to get a better look inside. There it was, a black Grand National, the one he'd seen from years before, looking exactly how he remembered it. But how could this be? Billy pulled his face away from the window and looked around, but no one in the vicinity seemed to notice anything out of place. He went around to the side of the building, checking for an access point. A steel door presented itself, and Billy gave a tug on the handle. The door resisted his efforts to open. After yanking on the handle several times, Billy acquiesced and walked away in search of another area of ingress. Tonight might be his only chance to get a better look at the car. Hell, he might even get the chance to drive it out of the showroom for a joyride. If he liked the car, he might contact the former general manager and see if a deal could be negotiated. He went to the back of the building where the customers once brought their cars for repairs. He pulled on the garage roll-top doors to no avail. The roll-top remained staunchly in place. Damn! He had to get into that showroom. He walked to the perimeter of the building, searching for an easy but inconspicuous access point. Seeing no other avenue of entry, his hand came to rest on the main doorway. He pulled on the handle, and in a shockwave of bewilderment, the door opened with no resistance. He gave a cursory look backwards and sideways to see if anyone had noticed, and then slipped inside the building. The interior of the Golden Mile was warm and inviting, giving no hint of abandonment, and in fact, Billy thought it gave an aura of some grand opening, a sense that it had been waiting for him and him alone. The overhead chandelier shined with diffuse light that spread to every corner of the showroom. The Buick Grand National squatted on its haunches, a flagship centerpiece of the dealership's past. Billy could not resist and made a straight line over to the driver's door and pulled. The door opened with a clean sweep, and Billy got in and sat behind the three-spoked wheel. He ran his hand over the velvety smooth upholstery. The interior smelled new. He checked the mileage. 3 miles, read the odometer. The dash cluster packed an array of gauges that signified this Grand National was no ordinary Buick, but rather the rarefied Grand National GNX, a highly exclusive and limited production model of the regular Grand National production line, if the words regular and Grand National could even be used in the same sentence without sounding outlandish. Billy took a deep breath and exhaled. "This thing's brand new," he said. "And it's a GNX. What a score!" Billy checked the dash plaque above the glove box in search of the serialized number for this particular GNX. It read GNX number 548. That was impossible. He knew there to be only 547 ever made of this particular model. There was no number 548. He dismissed the aberration and looked through the windshield to the rest of the dealership. The layers of dust that coated the floor had vanished, and the floor tiles gleamed under the chandelier. Sales desks were back in place along with their high-back chairs for the sales representatives, who at one time conducted and moved a large volume of inventory. Pictures of various sorts again adorned the walls of the lounge, and the sofa, once in tatters, graced the waiting room, so inviting. The only thing missing were the people. Billy exited the driver's seat with purpose. He needed to find the ignition key, and with some luck he might liberate this Buick from the defunct dealership. The Golden Mile thought so little of this car that they chose to leave it behind. How upset would they be if Billy Jensen converted the car for his own use? No one could be heard to complain. Who lets a Grand National, a GNX Grand National, to atrophy in a showroom for so long? Someone deserved to enjoy the car, and in Billy's mind, he was as deserving as anyone else. Since only 547 were ever made, it became clear to Billy that no one could ever miss the car number 548 because it did not exist. This was a gift from the gods, and he was going to accept their favor. He just needed to get this Grand National out of the showroom and clear it for travel on the open roads, with him behind the wheel. Then he could quiet title with a civil action in court to declare himself the legitimate owner. He hunted and found an ignition key in the lockbox behind the manager's desk. The box had conveniently been left open, and the only key inside was that one solitary key. He prayed it would fit the Buick, and if it did, he would be home free. Billy returned to the driver's seat and inserted the key. It slipped into place with crisp assuredness, and Billy flicked the ignition a half turn. Gauges sprang to life. What were the odds that the battery still had a charge after all these years? Yet the proof was self-evident. One more turn and the engine fired up with a potency he'd somehow heard before. The car sounded downright lethal in tone, a black predator ready to patrol the roads in search of prey. Billy turned the key to silence the engine. Nothing happened. The turbocharged V6 continued unabated. "What is this?" he said. He pulled the key from the ignition and looked at it. The engine continued to purr, and it seemed to whisper in his ears. The voice was feminine and inviting. It said, "Want to go for a ride, Billy?" Billy Jensen most certainly did not want to go for a ride. He needed to shut the engine off fast. He pulled on the hood release beneath the dash. Nothing happened. He swung the door open and went to the front of the car, fumbling for the latch. He found something that seemed to resemble a latch, and he pushed and pulled. Nothing happened. The engine continued its lethal growl. "Come on, Billy, let's go for a ride," said the voice. A faint odor of exhaust wafted under his nose, and he coughed. A twinge of panic resonated throughout his body. He made a straight line for the exit door and pushed. The door was locked. He turned and twisted on the lock button. Nothing happened. The exit door did not relent. Billy shoved on the door with his shoulder, putting all of his weight toward the exit. The door resisted, unable and unwilling to give. He kicked on the door, thinking he might break the lock. Nothing happened. This was absurd. His eyes darted around the showroom, looking for an alternate means of egress. He sprinted to the back and looked for another door. He found one and pushed on it with no result. The door would not give either by pushing or pulling. The volume of exhaust increased at an alarming rate, the Buick engine running its rhythmic cadence of doom. He had to think fast. Billy rushed to the entrance door of the service bays, intent on breaking in and sliding open any of the roll-top doors. Access to the service bays would not yield to his frantic effort to open up. Then Billy was struck with a realization that he might die. He headed back to the Buick and stared at it. He went to the rear and attempted to block the tailpipe with his hand, thinking it might stall the engine. The heat from the pipe burned his palm. He stood up and lost his balance, but saved himself from a nasty fall. He made his way to the driver's seat. If he couldn't open a door, he would ram this car right through the showroom window. Before he could engage the transmission to drive, the room started to spin, and he felt like retching. His breath came in short bursts, and his knees buckled. Billy's right foot hit the throttle wide open, and he lost consciousness. Morning light filtered through the showroom windows, and a chill air brought Billy up from the floor. A thick layer of dust covered the showroom, and the Buick had vanished. Billy stood up and brushed off the dust and grime from his leather jacket. He looked around the showroom and attempted to reconstruct the events in his mind. Many things were hazy, but he remembered the Buick most, a GNX with a phantom serial number that did not exist. The rest of the dealership was empty now. No seating, no reception, no furniture, and no chandelier. What happened? The Buick gone, there was no point in remaining, so Billy headed for the exit. When he pushed on the door, it would not move. "This is ridiculous," he exclaimed. Now he remembered the trouble he'd had the night he tried to leave the dealership. He laughed and walked toward the rear of the building. He spotted a back door that led to the car lot. He tried the door, but it remained stalwart, unyielding to his touch. He searched his mind for a solution and paced the floor. He doubled back to the showroom window and looked out to the overcast day. His eyes scanned the lot in search of his car. It was gone. He pounded the plate glass with his fist. "Where the hell is my car?" Something happened, but not what he expected. A cool wind rustled beyond the glass and blew a faded newspaper within visual range. The paper floated toward him with the mimicry of an invisible hand and set it down before him on the concrete. He squatted to read the headline and saw his picture sprawled beneath the caption. William Jensen recoiled in horror. "It can't be! It can't!" He pounded his fist repeatedly on the window and sobbed. It is sometimes said, and sometimes observed, that on any given Halloween, when the wind howls cold and the moon replaces the sun, if one listens carefully, a faint but futile banging on the showroom window can be heard from within one defunct dealership, a casualty of hard economic times decades ago. Some say the Golden Mile Chevrolet is haunted, while others say it's only the wind. But those who know, those who have experienced the phenomenon firsthand, can agree that it is the ghost of Billy Jensen begging to rescind the purchase of the Buick that killed him on Halloween night so long ago.